Today's lecture is on Sandel's Libertarianism chapter, and it's brought to you live from the Deaton family vehicle. And I dedicate today's lecture to my 2-year-old niece, Carly, whose birthday party I'm en route to attend. In the back I have my niece, Miss Lily, my daughter Emily, my beautiful wife Lisa. So libertarianism is a political and a moral view that emphasizes unfettered markets and low government regulation on capitalism, as well as a healthy respect for personal liberty and the allowance of consenting adults to do pretty much whatever consenting adults would like to do. And so think of it in that way. You've got two different sides, an economic side and a personal liberty side. And you've got two different arguments that are very much related but distinct that argue for those two different components of libertarianism. Sandel mentions Milton Friedman, he mentions Frederick Hayek, mentions several different proponents of libertarianism, but the most famous is Robert Nozick. Nozick wrote this book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia, which was the first full book of philosophy I ever read. It was recommended by a professor at Mississippi State when I was an undergraduate there.
Hey. We're on 695. What's the next step?
In it, Nozick argues that we own ourselves. And since we own ourselves, we own our talents. And since we own our talents, we own the fruits of our talents. What this just means is no one else owns us. We're able to, and we should be able to, control how we spend our lives, how we spend our time, what we do with our time, what we do in the market, how we engage with others. Since that's the case, whatever price we're able to demand in the market, we should be able to keep 100% of that. And so the government ought not tax my income and then use that income for things that I haven't explicitly approved. And when the government does that, it's akin to theft. It's like they're stealing from me. It's also akin to slavery in the sense that you could equate the percentage of my paycheck that's taken in taxes. You could relate that to the percentage of time that I worked. And so say I'm taxed overall at a rate of 25%. Well, if I work a 40-hour week, that means for 10 hours a week, I did something that I didn't fully consent to. And therefore, during that 10 hours, I worked as if I were a slave. So that's a strong argument on the economic side of the equation. On the personal liberty side of the equation, there's the simple argument that, hey, we're adults. We're rational, we're autonomous. Whatever decisions we make, they primarily impact us. And so we should be able to choose however we spend our lives, whatever we want to do. And if others impose their conception of morality upon us, that's an illegitimate form of paternalism, and it ought not be done. And so an implication of this is that libertarians would advocate, if they're consistent, for legalized prostitution, for gay marriage, for widespread drug use. If a person wants to use heroin, they would argue that person should be allowed to use heroin, so long as they are an adult and a rational adult. If a person wants to purchase a prostitute, if a prostitute would like to sell her services, or he would like to sell his services, they should be able to engage in that sort of a transaction because, hey, they're adults. Let them do what they want to do, and the same thing for homosexuals who like to get with.
I didn't think of that. I also didn't think of Google Maps.
Those are the implications of the liberty side. The implications of the economic side are that we wouldn't have Social Security, we wouldn't have public schools, we wouldn't have public roads, we wouldn't have public parks, we wouldn't have anything that is taken from some and provided to others. Libertarians argue that we should leave it to market forces to provide all of those things. And no doubt, without public roads, there would indeed be private roads. And I've found that here in Maryland, there are far more private roads here than there are in Tennessee. I'm not sure if there are any private roads in Tennessee, but up here we have to always enter into the GPS, avoid toll roads. If I don't want to pay for the toll, I typically don't, because they're everywhere. If there weren't public roads, we would be forced to use toll roads. Libertarians say that's completely consistent. Why should I be taxed for roads that I never drive on? Why should a portion of my income or a portion of the sale of the gasoline that I purchase, why should that tax be used to pay for roads I'm never going to drive on? I should only pay for the roads that I actually use. And so we can only do that if people directly pay for toll roads. And so there's a mixture of the economic side of the equation and also the personal liberty side of the equation. Notes it gives a famous argument, which he calls the Wilt Chamberlain argument. Wilt Chamberlain was a famous basketball player back around the time the book was published, I think in the mid-1970s. Sandel updates this story by calling it the Michael Jordan example. I'm going to update it further and say it's the LeBron James example. And here it is. Imagine that before the basketball season begins, we take all of the wealth in the United States and we spread it completely evenly. And this would be to appease what we might consider egalitarians, people who think that everyone should have exactly the same amount of everything. Same amount of wealth, same amount of income, same amount of possessions, etc., etc. We spread all that evenly. And then we set the economy in motion and say that the Miami Heat has a special fund set up such that when you go online to purchase your tickets to go see them play a basketball game, there's a special little field where you can add, and you must add, say $50 to see LeBron in particular. You spend, I don't know how much NBA basketball tickets are, maybe that's not the best example. Say the tickets are $60. You've got to put $10 in a special little field just for LeBron James. And so season begins, the season ends. At the end of the season, LeBron has captured, say, $600 million from just that little special fund. At the beginning of the season, everybody had exactly the same amount of money. At the end of the season, LeBron has a heck of a lot more than the vast majority of us. Nozick argues that, look, egalitarians, if you think that the distribution of wealth and income at the beginning of the season was just, was moral, was ethical, was okay, you should agree that the distribution of wealth at the end of the season is also just and moral and ethical, etc. Because the only thing that changed was that rational adults voluntarily gave a bunch of their money to LeBron James. And if consenting adults did that, there's not a darn thing wrong with it. And so this argument is what some people have called an intuition pump. It's something to really bring to the surface and really hone and polish perhaps a considered conviction that we have that adults should be able to do with their money whatever they like. And if a result of that spending of their money is that some people have more than others, well, then that shows that there's nothing wrong with inequality. And Sandel actually begins the chapter by giving some pretty staggering statistics that a very small percentage of America's population, say the top 1%, controls and owns the vast majority of America's wealth. Was it 80% or 90%? It's a heck of a lot of money. And it's perhaps troubling that wealth is passed down from generation to generation to children who do nothing at all to deserve to be born into those families, and the rest of us have to essentially fight over what's left over. Maybe that's disturbing, maybe it's not, but it's something that Sandel begins the chapter with. But Nozick would say, hey, it's no big deal if it's the result of free transactions amongst adults. Nobody's stealing anything. That's completely fine. All right, so Nozick and others, they argue for the minimalist state. That means the state would just protect our personal property as well as our personal security. A state that does more than that just provides police protection to keep our possessions protected and also our bodies protected from assailants or burglars or whatever. A state that does more than that does too much, and it's unethical for a state to do more than that, especially if taxes to do more than that. Perhaps the state could also provide for national defense. And Nozick has a long argument to substantiate that we won't go into right now. Big criticism of libertarianism. There's two criticisms, and again, I told you to divide this with into the economic side and the personal liberty side. On the personal liberty side, I'll give you that criticism first. It's not the case that the decisions that we make only impact us. If I wanted to become a heroin addict, for example, most libertarians would say, Matt, you should be able to become a heroin addict and ruin your life if you want to, because, hey, it's your life. But that fails to appreciate the fact that if I become a heroin addict, it's going to impact Miss Lily back there, it's going to impact Miss Emily, it's going to impact Miss Lisa as well. In fact, it's going to impact you, because I'm not going to be nearly as good of a philosophy professor if I'm addicted to heroin. I don't know if I'd be cooler or easier or greater or what, but I think my job performance would definitely go down. And also, I wouldn't be contributing any longer to the social welfare, to the social good, and if I've benefited anything at all from being born into a society that bestowed upon me different technologies and knowledge and language and et cetera, perhaps I owe something back to that society. And if I'm just wasting my life, or what I would consider wasting my life as a heroin addict, I'm doing the rest of you a certain amount of wrong. So that's one criticism. You can take it or leave it. That's one criticism. Another criticism, this is on the economic side of the equation, is that no one fully deserves all of their talents. Take LeBron James, for example. LeBron James, no doubt,
I'm behind you.
we're following my in-laws to the birthday party, by the way. LeBron James, no doubt, has worked very, very hard to get where he is. He's practiced far more than I've ever practiced.
Okay,
but
so 140.
everyone would agree LeBron James
Oh,
was born with
140.
special natural gifts, special natural
Westminster
talents
Road.
that the rest
Okay.
of us were not born with.
Alrighty, thank you.
Did he do anything at all to deserve those special natural gifts and talents? Not a darn thing. He just happened to be born. Did I do anything to be born with the talents that I have, whatever those may be? No, none of us did. Did I do anything at all to deserve to be born into a loving family that cared for me, that nurtured me, that gave me confidence, and gave me a solid foundation to be a hardworking person, etc.? I didn't deserve that. What about people who are born with disabilities? The people who are born into abusive families? The people who are born into uneducated versus very educated families, very supportive families versus unsupportive and, in fact, deleterious or harmful families? None of us deserve any of those things, but they have a huge impact on our ability to make money in the economy. They have a huge impact on our ability to succeed in general, but in particular to make money in the economy. Therefore, LeBron doesn't deserve 100% of the money he makes. Neither do I, neither do you. You probably deserve, and in fact I think most people would agree you deserve a large percentage of it because you're the one who's putting in the effort to go to school, to better yourself, to work hard, etc. Others make choices with their time to do things such as to sit around and perhaps become heroin addicts. But it's not the case that we 100% deserve the fruits of our labor. So Nozick argued we own ourselves, we own our talents, therefore we own the fruits of our talents, but he assumes it's 100%. The objection is, since so much of what goes into our ability to make money is luck, we don't own 100% of it. And the fact that LeBron James is able to make $600 million is also a function of the fact that he happened to be born in a time when the game of basketball was so lucrative. If he were born 100 years prior, or perhaps 100 years later, it probably wouldn't be the case that basketball was so lucrative, and perhaps he wouldn't be nearly as rich, and so we can't say that he deserves all that money because he didn't deserve to be born when he was born. All right. There's another criticism, take it or leave it. Your discussion question for today is this. Now you understand libertarianism, you understand it's divided into a personal liberty and an economic side. You also understand some pretty, you understand two criticisms of it. One, that our decisions don't just impact ourselves, they impact others, and also the argument that we don't 100% deserve, we don't deserve 100% of the fruit of our talents because it's a factor of many things over which we had no control and deserve no credit. Evaluate that argument. Evaluate libertarianism in light of those criticisms. Is there a way to avoid those criticisms? Or do those criticisms completely shoot down libertarianism? And think about this in the context of the political climate that's going on, or the political climate at this very moment, and the political developments that are going on at this very moment. Right now, the government is still shut down because there are a group of persons in the United States Congress who, many of whom consider themselves libertarians. They associate themselves in most cases with the Tea Party, but a lot of them say, hey, I'm a libertarian, like Rand Paul and Ron Paul, and I guess Ron's in there anymore. But do these arguments work? Does libertarianism make a lot of sense? Do those criticisms shoot it down? Is it able to avoid those criticisms? Evaluate, explain, make it clear that you've thought about this. Thanks so much for your attention. Look forward to your answers.